This is Caroline from Caroline's Adventure. We all face challenges in our lives. How do some people take those challenges and turn them into powerful results? Join me as we dig into a story on resilience, hope, and joy, and uncover lessons we can each use in our own lives. But before we start, please take a moment to show that 5-star rating button some love, and follow while you're there to be updated every time I release a new episode. Now, before we begin, a word of caution. On this podcast, we regularly discuss topics like sexual assault, suicide, and addiction, which may be disturbing to some. Please take care as you listen. And if you need support in the United States, reach out to the Crisis Text line at 741-741. Well, thank you again, Rob Scheer, for making time in your busy schedule. You speak to a topic that I really care a lot about. It's something that's resonated with me. I've talked with you before about the fact that kids in foster care deserve homes. I mean, that's the long and the short of it, is that kids in foster care deserve homes. As a nation, kids deserve to have a place to call home, a bed that's theirs, a pillow that's theirs, a space that's theirs. And because it's national...
And I agree with you. And I'm going to cut you off there because I think that we have to make sure that we understand something. It's not just the fact that children deserve homes. It's the fact that we as a society make a stronger foundation when children are in loving homes that show unconditional love and that truly want them for the right reasons. Because we have got to pull that band-aid off and stop acting like children are going to homes and all the homes are perfect and great and they want them. And instead, a lot of the homes, as when I was in, it's all about the check. So yes, we truly do need children to have homes, but we need to have loving homes and homes that are going to, first of all, homes that are going to talk about their trauma. I mean, I have met so many adoptive parents who have adopted children out of foster care, and they have actually said to me, and I'm always shocked about it, and they're like, well, I don't understand why Johnny's having any of these issues. Look what all he has. Well, yeah, you might have given him a bed and a car and a bike and a nice Christmas present and a trip, but that's still not understanding that he had a life book prior to this and the trauma that he's experienced. So I don't think it's just all about having homes. I think it's about having a complete circle around this child of so many things that make that child really being a productive human in our society.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's funny, you and I were talking before we started taping about how disruptive travel is. And when it's not just travel, but it is complete uprooting of your entire world and losing everything. I don't care how bad your home life is, it's still your home life. And
Your home.
coming from an awful home life, one of the threats that my parents would use was, if you think this is bad, let them take you away and you will see how much worse it can be. And so it is still what you know. It is still your comfort. It is still, until you see something better, it is still what your touch point is for what home is. And
Yes, yes.
giving
And
kids
that's what people cannot forget. People cannot forget. Let me tell you something. It didn't matter how much abuse I went to. Okay. It didn't matter how many times my father put cigarettes out on us. It didn't matter the fact of how much food was. That was my home. Okay. And as a little boy, as I grew up from birth up to the age of 12, there is that inside of my mind that says, this is what I was given and this is what I deserve. And I remember foster parents going, well, you had it a lot harder. And as I'm scrubbing their kitchen floor, thinking to myself, I think I would have rather have been beaten than having to feel the unwanted love that I feel right now. So you're right. I mean, I say this quite often, and I get a lot of hate emails on my podcast and stuff for it. Foster care is not the answer. It's not the answer. The answer for 64% of kids who enter the system is, how do we keep the child in their home. And when I say 64%, these are children who are removed because of one word, and that is neglect. They're not removed because someone put a cigarette out on them. They're not removed because somebody beat them. They're not removed because somebody locked them in a closet. They're not removed because they are removed because of one word, neglect. And neglect is defined as poverty. Poverty. Mom can't afford to get a babysitter, so she leaves her 3-month-old with her 10-year-old so she can go to work. CPS comes in and takes the children. Mom can't afford, and I say mom because you dads, sorry to say it, the majority of you're deadbeats. You'll allow it to happen. And mom can't afford electricity. So she has to leave her children at home with no electricity so she can go to work. And what happens? Kids are taken away. Mom can't afford rent, so they're living in their car. What do? We take the kids away. Instead of coming in and helping that mother, stabilize that mother, give that mother the resource, pay her a living wage, that she doesn't have these issues. Maybe you could, and we got to look at what is the mother's life story. Maybe she had nobody that she could actually have a role model. Maybe she is the part of the cycle. We've got to go in, and if we can send strangers a check, there is no reason, my friend, that we can't give this mother a helping hand. And by the way, for all you churches out there and you synagogues and you mosques, and you want to talk about what your job is, what you're supposed to be doing, let me tell you what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be going into those communities and helping those families before those children are yanked away and put into a stranger's home. And that's truly how I feel.
I agree. I agree. If you're going to get tax exempt status, show us how you actually help people and
Exactly.
put it to work. I
Yeah, and not live in your big houses, where you take all the tithing, you live in a big house and you drive these fancy cars. When is the last time you've taken that money and truly helped your fellow neighbor and make sure? I mean, and by the way, you can just walk down the street and you can tell what family needs help and which family doesn't. Simple as that. And that is something that we're not doing in society, but instead we're seeing the number of children. I wear this shirt so proudly because I want people to read it. It says 700 children enter foster care every single day. That's one child every 2 minutes that enter this shattered system. Okay. It is the reason people said, why is our homeless population going up? Why is our Supreme Court even talking about our homeless population? Let me explain why. Because we have over 20,000 children age out of foster care, and 70% of those kids within the first 18 months become homeless. And when you have that many number of kids living on the streets, you are going to have an increase in our homeless population. And people have said to me, well, I don't see kids on the street. Of course you don't,
oh,
because we're scared of you. When I was homeless, I was scared to death for somebody to see me. So I hid in the public libraries, I hid in the malls, I hid in the shopping centers, and I tried to do everything I could to assimilate within the community. So someone didn't see that I was homeless, because then what do? You grab me, you stick me in your psychiatric hospitals, your detention centers, you target me because of the fact that I'm a child who's been on the streets. But in fact, you should be targeting yourself because you failed me.
and kids are resourceful. I mean, that's the thing.
Yes.
Kids are amazingly resourceful. They are good at hiding. They are good at masking. They are good at fitting in. I know growing up, I had times when authorities would ask me about a bruise or about this or about that, and I was amazing at lying about it because the last thing I wanted was to stick out or be seen. I wanted to be just like every other
Me
kid.
too.
And so, when we didn't have access to running water, I would go into school, and the first thing I would do is I would go and clean up in the bathroom because the last thing I wanted to do is be the dirty kid walking into the
Yep.
classroom.
Yep. I've been there with you, my sister. I totally get it.
So it makes total sense that the number of kids in the system is unseen because they are so well, we are, but they are so good at flying under the radar.
Yeah.
So what do
Yeah.
we do about that though? What do we do
Well,
about that?
well, let me tell you, the first thing that we've got to stop, and we all have to stop doing, is stop being on different islands. We as nonprofits who are in here pounding our chest, helping children in foster care, everybody wants to sit on an island by themselves because they're so scared they might lose a funder. And I remind people all the time there's enough money to go around. People ask me, why do I have nonprofits on my podcast? And why do I push their organization? Because again, there's enough money to go around. And I truly do believe that if we all came together, that we truly could solve this problem. I also believe that if we got our mosques, our synagogues, and our churches together and really had a conference based on child welfare, we could solve the problem. We could solve the problem. But as long as we don't, as long as we continue not to admit the problem, let me give you a good example. So I have, with Delegate Vogel in my state of Maryland, we have worked so hard to get a bill passed. A bill was that is attached with a budget for children not to have trash bags. And so that agencies would be required to give them new luggage, not used luggage from someone's stinky basement, but new luggage. I was absolutely horrified when the Department of Human Services in the state of Maryland wrote a letter stating, by the way, didn't even show up to the judicial committee to testify like I did, wrote a letter and stated that we are over exaggerating and there are not children in our foster care system carrying trash bags in the state of Maryland. Well, let me tell you something. We did one step further. We took pictures. We took pictures of kids who were being transported with trash bags. So that was a bunch of bullshit. And that's the problem. And the problem is we don't admit that there's a problem. And the fact is that we do not admit that it is an industry that makes money on the backs of children, billions and billions and billions of dollars with no accountabilities. I just recently saw where the federal government gave a nonprofit, several $1 million, and because they were going to fix the system. I've watched them for 2 years and I haven't seen anything but them have, company retreats and, parties. And it's like, where do you, what system are you fixing? Because I'm sitting here in the trenches. I'm visiting every single state. I'm going to these group homes. I'm going to visit with foster parents. They're not getting the help that they deserve. And we want to talk about reunification and keeping the children with their parents. Well, we got to start helping to do that. And then if we want to try to find birth families, we have to invest in that. But sitting around at a table throwing out ideas isn't making change. You got to get in the trenches, grab your shovel, and truly start moving all that BS that's in there and find out what is the root issue.
It's interesting. In doing the interviews for this podcast, I've talked with a wide variety of people. I've spoken repeatedly with people who've been in prison for long term and have come out and gone on to be productive members of society. I've spoken with drug addicts. I've spoken with people all across the spectrum of humanity. And the number one unifying thing that I have noticed, and I haven't pulled their attention to this yet, but it's something that keeps catching my attention every single time. You want to guess what makes, in their own words, the biggest difference in their ability to come back from major life challenges and be productive?
What is that?
Having a family that stands behind them, and more importantly, a mother. And it's crazy. When I first started noticing this trend, I was like, well, that's really cool. The first couple of times I heard, I was like, that's really cool. But the more I hear these stories, the more having a family, and it isn't just biological family. It's having a group of friends. It's a church group. It's a whatever it is that constitutes a family for that person. But having a group behind them to support them through the hard times and that they know are watching out for them and watching what they do. And we as a nation need to step together and be that family. We need to come together and stop pointing fingers at one another.
Yeah. I agree. I agree 100% with you. I mean, it only, I've read this and heard this for so many years. There's only one step away from a good human is another good human to help that human. And I truly do believe that. And we have to get out of our bubble and stop thinking that the federal government is taking care of these people, because these people are our people and we need to step up and help them. You know, I believe we need to open up the education pathways. And I don't mean just colleges, I mean trade schools. But we also have to look at wraparound services, not just paying tuition, but how do they pay their electric? How do they pay for their food? How do they, because there's no sense in putting somebody in a trade school or a college and they have to work three jobs,
Yeah.
because they'll never get their homework done. So how are we going to do all the wraparound service? And then when it comes to the mental health, I mean, the problem that we're seeing state after state after state is that, I mean, I just spoke to a family yesterday where, they've been waiting for 4 months to get their son, who is 15 years old, a therapist. That's not acceptable. It's
That's a
not
long time.
acceptable.
That is a long time
Once
when
you
you're,
notice once you notice that a child needs a therapist, that therapist should be there the next day, not waiting, because it's that cycle that they go down, and we see it all the time.
and it's sad because it's the individuals that we're letting down. When we focus on the benefit of the large corporations, the billionaires, when we focus on things that benefit them, it's the individuals that pay. And we as a nation have lost sight of that. When we're worried about taxing the billionaires, it's not other billionaires that pay. It's not even the wealthy that pay. It's the smallest, most vulnerable of us that pay. And
Yeah.
it slip through the
Oh, I
cracks.
agree. And by the way, it's those exact same people that are out there volunteering to make a difference. I look at the people that come into our national center packing cases, and these are, it was one of the reasons why at COVID we changed our entire fundraising concepts when it comes to galas. It no longer was about that $400 ticket and the black tie and all of that, because I've said to my husband, I said, we've outpriced the people who truly come into our center, who truly are rolling their sleeves up. They can't afford that $400 because they're out there buying pajamas for us and stuffed animals for us. So we changed the whole concept where we made that ticket affordable, where they could come to a backyard barbecue and really enjoy a good afternoon with their family. And I think that once again, as nonprofits, that is our responsibility to really look at who is standing next to us. And by the way, it's not the million and the billionaires.
Mm-mm. No. I mean, Jeff Bezos is worried about taking down a bridge so that he can get his mega yacht, through. Like, he's not worried about the two kids down the street that are going hungry at night and that can't go to school and focus because they're so hungry and their life is so chaotic. That's not his concern. And so
No, no,
any
no.
any tax breaks or benefits that we give him aren't going to go back to make the system better.
No, no. We know that for a fact. We know that for a fact. And I'm a true believer that, we should pay our own. We should pay. I mean, we make it, we should pay it, and we shouldn't complain about it, because, we are truly, truly building the foundation of our future. And to me, that's when you invest in, I remember as a young boy, I would hear people say, invest in a child and you invest in their future. And that is such a lie. When you invest in a child, you actually invest in my future. You invest in your future, because they're our leaders of tomorrow. So stop with the BS, investing in them for their future. You should be investing in them because of your future, because, they're the ones who are going to determine our Medicaid. They're the ones that are going to determine our boundaries. They're the ones that's going to determine our Supreme Court. They're the ones that are going to determine everything that's happening within the Hill. So why would we not invest in these kids? I mean, especially when you look at almost 400,000 of them, no matter what the statistics are, there will be some of those kids who will go to greater heights.
Yeah.
I know that. Look at you and I. I mean, the fact is not every one of us stays as low as we possibly can because we've been given nothing. For me, I stopped blaming the system. I was like that kid who was like, oh, poor me when I was in my 20s. And I finally woke up one day and was like, I can't blame the system anymore. I got to get in there and change the system. And it changed my life. And I think I wish more kids would think that and say, listen, got to stop blaming the system. Let's get in there and truly roll our sleeves up and change the system and not with a bunch of BS.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, when Rockefeller developed the public school system, he looked at it and it was not a out of the kindness of and goodness of my own heart, let me fund the system and get it rolling. He was like, how do I create employees? How do I create employees that give me better quality employees in my workspace? And
Amen.
and that is, whether you agree with the public school system or not, he's long gone. He died a long time ago, and he is still paying it forward in that system that continues to help American kids. Whether I mean, I homeschool, so I definitely got my own viewpoints on the public school system, but um,
Right, right.
the point remains that every child in America deserves to have access to a bare minimum of education and likewise a bare minimum of food, a bare minimum of medical care, a bare minimum of housing, of clothing, of the basic human essentials. We owe that to our kids at a
I
minimum.
agree. And I was so happy when I just read in the news the other day about the states that have decided to give free lunches to kids no matter what their economic level is. It's about damn time.
It is.
The fact is every single one of these kids deserve a free breakfast. Every single one of these kids deserve a free lunch. And I don't care whether you're making $10 million or you're not even having a job. Every single one of these kids deserve to have food sitting in front of them because we know for a fact when you feed a child's stomach, it will have their mind grow. And that's what we want. So why would we not do those two things? Let me tell you, and again, here will come the hate. If we can send $1 billion to a nation, to help them build another warship, you can't tell me that we can't invest that money in our children right here on our own homeland. That is not acceptable. That is not acceptable. And we have got to change those policies immediately. And I'm a true believer in helping others, but you cannot worry about somebody's backyard if your front yard is a total wreck. And our front yard in America is a wreck when it comes to our kids.
Well, and it's one of those things where, as we discussed earlier, it's not just the here and now that we need to focus on. It's what is it that we are sending forward. People are so focused on grabbing their own and making certain that their own pockets are covered. And the thing is, every child that we send forward, that's who's going to be funding Social Security. That's who's going to be funding the government going forward. The thing that we've lost sight of is that each generation helps to support the generations behind it. And if we lose
Yes.
sight of that, we ultimately, it's our own pockets that we are long-term impacting. If you want to
Nope.
look at it from a
I agree.
purely selfish standpoint.
I agree 100% with you, my friend. That's why I love being on your podcast.
Well, I appreciate it. This is wonderful. So one of the things I'd mentioned to you is that I'm in a group where there was a large group of people that were talking about the fact that right now foster care is desperate for families and support. And we talked about getting the churches, but what at an individual level can people do to really help move this needle forward?
Well, the first thing I think people should do is that they should look to see if they have the time to be a CASA. That to me is probably the most important thing next to being a foster parent is being a CASA. For those of you who don't know this, it's a court-appointed special advocate. These are the only true lifelines to kids that are in foster care. So if a child moves from placement to placement, they never change their CASA. Their CASA stays with them. And I will tell you, I have interviewed, met, know thousands and thousands of CASAs. It is so life-changing. It is so rewarding. And I've met thousands of kids in our system who have CASAs and said, I don't know what I would have done without my CASA. So that's the very first thing that you should do. If you don't have time to be a CASA, and by the way, the biggest investment in a CASA is the 6 weeks of training that you have to do. If you cannot be a CASA, then go find your closest child welfare office and find out how you can be a part of that office, whether it's mentoring, whether it's supervising visits once a week or once a month, whether it's, helping your community collect games for their rainbow room while the kids are sitting there with their visits. Those are type of things. I hear people say all the time, "Oh, I can't help that organization because I have no money." I'm like, "Excuse me, you have the most valuable thing in the world. You have time. Time. Invest your time. That is valuable, and that's exactly what you can do is invest your time. Go find, let me tell you, about maybe 20 minutes from where we live, we have the National Center for Children and Family. They actually have boys' homes there. There's about 15 boys, and I tell people all the time, go play basketball with them.
Hmm.
Go shoot some hoops. Go help them with homework when the school bus gets there. Those little things, those 45 minutes that you break away and you can, let that kid know that they are the most important thing could be the difference between that kid going into the next level or going into a penitentiary. Those are the things that you should be doing as humans.
That's awesome. I love that. And the great thing is that none of these take money. And most.
No, no, none of them. No, being a cause is free. Mentoring's free. Playing basketball is free. Helping with homework is free. So the excuses you want to make, that's all they are excuses. And for those of you who say you don't have enough time, come on, stand with my schedule. I still make time out to go to group homes. I still make sure, that I can get, and I am busy as all can get up, 12-hour days. But you know what? It is worth it. And by the way, at the end of the day, when I'm out there and I'm, sitting down and reading a book to a kid in the system or, visiting group homes and sitting around and talking to these young adults, I get into my car and I have the biggest overwhelming smile in my heart. So let me tell you, you get a lot out of it yourself, not just the children that you're helping.
Absolutely. When I worked in the corporate world, I would volunteer to go and help kids over lunch hour. And it's amazing how, and this was before I had kids. So now that I've got kids, I have a better sense of how to actually interact with kids. But it was such a wonderful uplift. It was the best part of my entire week. And I love this. These are super actionable. Um, so what's the last thing that you want to share with us? Like, what is the thing that you want to leave us with?
The thing that I want each and every person to know is that children who are in foster care are experiencing it. It doesn't define them. And I think that if we as a collective whole start changing our vocabulary, stop labeling these children, and just call them what they are, which are true children, and they are children in need, and we really start to focus on the need for them and realizing that these are children, I think that we could go a long way. I think as soon as we stick the F word in front of these children's names, oh, Tommy's a foster child or Susie's a foster child. Society has such a negative concept about the word foster. It immediately makes us step back and say, oh, these are troubled kids. And so I think if we walk into the arena knowing that these are children, they're children in need, and they are children that are in a particular they're in a particular circumstance because of a choice that someone else made, not for what they made, a choice that someone else made. I think we can start seeing that needle move even more, by the way.
I
So
love
that's
that.
what I would leave with everybody. Listen, we all can make a difference, and that's what we should. Be good humans. I say it all the time. It's on my cup, it's on my shirts, it's on everything. Be a good human because good humans make a beautiful world. So
I
listen,
love
thank you so much for having me on your podcast again. I can't wait to do it again. And take care, everybody. And again, get out there and be a good human. And happy National Foster Care Awareness Month. Let's take this month and really make the needle move.
Thank you, Rob. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care.
You too. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Caroline's Adventure podcast. While you're here, subscribe to the show so you're the first to catch new episodes when they're released. And if you enjoyed hanging out with me today, please leave a 5-star rating. For links to social media and more content, visit the description for this episode or go to carolinesadventure.com. That's Caroline with 2 A's, adventure.com.